The moment I opened my front door that morning, I never expected my entire life to crack open like fragile glass. Yet there I stood on the small wooden porch, staring at two girls who looked like they hadn't slept in days, their backpacks sagging with exhaustion, and their eyes carrying stories they didn't know how to speak. The air felt heavy, sunlight glinting off the edge of the room for rent sign that I had hung only the night before, not expecting anyone to respond so soon. But what hit me hardest wasn't their sudden appearance. It was the way the dark-haired one clutched the strap of her bag with trembling fingers, and the blonde beside her shifted as if she was one heartbeat away from sinking to her knees. Something was wrong, terribly wrong, and even though they insisted they'd stay only one night, some instinct deep inside me realized that nothing about this moment was temporary. This feeling of standing at the edge of an unknown cliff, it wasn't going to leave me soon. If you believe in hope, compassion, and second chances, and you want this ripple of love to reach more people, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Their names were Raina and Sophie. They said it quickly, as if speaking too much would make them unravel. I felt a strange pull toward them, a quiet plea hidden beneath their polite smiles. The midday heat softened the lines of their faces, but their eyes held the coldness of someone who had lived through something unfair and carried its weight alone. They told me they only needed a place for one night, just to rest, just to breathe. I didn't ask questions. I should have, but sometimes people carry storms inside them, and asking too much only makes the lightning strike harder. Besides, I knew what it looked like to carry things you couldn't explain. I had once stood in the same place they were standing, on the edge of something dark after losing both my parents within the same brutal month. That kind of pain stains you. It teaches you to recognize silent suffering in others. The sun hovered high as I led them inside, the light filtering through the windows like sheets of muted gold. The house felt too quiet, as it always did, every footstep echoing the emptiness that had followed me for years. Raina looked around with cautious curiosity, as though homes were unfamiliar places to her, while Sophie walked slowly, her breathing uneven, her fingers brushing the walls for balance. There was a chill in her presence, not from the temperature, but from the way someone carries memories they can't release. I gave them the spare room, and they stared at the simple bed and folded blankets as if I had handed them something far more valuable. Something like safety. Sophie's eyes watered for just a second, and she blinked it away quickly. That tiny, fragile moment lodged itself in me like a seed waiting to grow in the cracks of an old heart. Throughout the daytime hours, I tried to distract myself by working on my laptop in the living room, but I kept hearing whispers from the back room, the shifting of bags, the soft pacing of feet, the fractured rhythm of two people dealing with something heavy. They didn't speak loudly. They didn't want to be heard. Still, the quiet held more meaning than words ever could. When they finally came out, they moved carefully, sitting across from me at the dining table. Sunlight glowed behind them, outlining their forms in a warm halo that contrasted the tired shadows beneath their eyes. Raina spoke first, her voice low, telling me they were traveling through town, trying to make it to a distant city where they hoped to restart their lives. Sophie stared down at her hands, her pale fingers tracing invisible patterns against the wooden surface. The tension between them felt almost sacred, two people holding each other together in a world that had tried to break them. I noticed Raina constantly watching Sophie with protective concern, as if she expected her to shatter at any moment. Sophie avoided eye contact, her shoulders curled inward, her breath shallow. Every now and then, a faint tremor passed through her like a memory she wished she could forget. As the afternoon deepened, the truth began to leak through the cracks of their silence. They weren't just travelers. They weren't just tired. They were running from something, someone. Raina hinted at it in subtle ways, her voice tight when she spoke about their old place, her eyes darkening when she mentioned someone who wouldn't stop looking for them. Sophie flinched at every loud sound outside, every unfamiliar noise. A car door closing on the street made her grip the edge of her seat until her knuckles turned ghost white. The weight of their fear pressed into the room like a rising tide. I wanted to ask more, but I knew some stories needed permission. And permission came slowly. Later, when evening sunlight stretched long shadows across the living room, Sophie quietly excused herself and stepped outside to the small backyard. The sky above her was soft and pastel, the kind of sky that tried to soothe aching souls. I watched her from the window as she stood near the fence, breathing deeply, her eyes glistening in the fading light. There was something heartbreakingly fragile about her, like a photograph left too long in the sun. Raina joined her moments later, placing a hand on her back. I couldn't hear what she said, but I saw Sophie collapse into her arms in a slow, silent motion that broke something inside me. A girl shouldn't have to cry like that. No one should. The sight clenched my chest, and a quiet responsibility began brewing inside me, a feeling that these two strangers had walked into my life for a reason bigger than coincidence. They said they would leave in the morning, but morning felt like a threat more than a plan. When the sun rose, they didn't appear with packed bags. Instead, Raina stood in the doorway of the kitchen, her face pale, her voice trembling as she admitted they had nowhere safe to go. Their haunting truth spilled out in fragments, Sophie escaping someone who had controlled every breath she took, Raina rescuing her at the cost of leaving her own life behind. They had been on buses, in shelters, on strangers' couches, and every step of the way, fear followed closely behind like a shadow that refused to detach. I realized suddenly that the universe had trusted me with something fragile, something breakable yet precious. They had said one night, but one night was never going to fix wounds carved so deeply. Days passed, and each day unfolded like a new glimpse into the quiet tragedies they carried. I watched Sophie slowly reclaim pieces of herself, finding comfort in the warm sunlight pooling through the windows, the quiet mornings on the porch, the gentle routines that made her feel human again. Raina found peace in small tasks, helping organize the house, cooking simple meals, folding laundry, actions that gave her a feeling of control after living in chaos for so long. Somewhere in those days, the house stopped feeling empty. Somewhere in those days, I stopped feeling alone. And somewhere in those days, the two girls who were supposed to stay only one night began stitching themselves into the fabric of my life. One late afternoon, when the sun painted everything with a soft golden glow, Raina approached me with tears glistening across her eyes. She told me she had finally found the courage to reach out to a support organization that could help them rebuild their lives safely. They would be leaving soon, not because they wanted to, but because healing sometimes required stepping into a new chapter with brave, trembling steps. Sophie hugged me that day, her frail arms tightening around me with silent gratitude, and I felt the full weight of how far they had come. Before we reach the final moment, please leave a comment telling what part of their journey touched you the most. And as their last morning arrived, the house filled with a soft sadness that settled into every room. The sun was gentle that day, as if even the sky understood what farewell meant. I stood on the porch watching them with their bags, lighter now not because they carried less, but because their hearts carried more strength than before. Sophie turned back one last time, her eyes no longer hollow but shimmering with new hope. Raina stood beside her, her posture no longer tense but steady, proud, and fiercely protective. If this story touched your heart, please support it so more people can feel its warmth. They walked away down the quiet street, sunlight catching their hair, their steps uncertain yet brave. And as I watched them disappear into the soft brightness of the day, something inside me shifted, an understanding that sometimes the people who enter our lives unexpectedly leave behind the most permanent imprints. Those two girls said they'd stay only one night, but what happened next didn't just shock me, it healed me. Their courage awakened a part of me I thought had died long ago, and in the quiet after they left, I realized that sometimes we save others without knowing they were saving us too.